this rolling monstrosity looks fit to star in a great value straight-to-VHS remake of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. What's up everyone, Drew from SubaruX. We've talked before about how we like Subarus because, among other reasons, they're just a little bit odd. But aside from the Baja we brought in a couple weeks ago, we haven't spent much time talking about the weird choices that Subaru has actually made over the years. Although they've settled into a pretty standard lineup, they've done a lot of experimentation on the way here. Some of it worked, some of it not so much.
Tell me it'll produce 228 pound-feet of torque. I don't know what that means, but I like it.
But regardless of whether the risks actually paid off or not, Subaru has always made cars that were, if nothing else, pretty interesting. Today, we wanted to spend a few minutes shining a spotlight on some of the weirdest, quirkiest, most off-the-wall cars that Subaru's made while they were trying to figure out just what exactly it is that makes a Subaru a Subaru. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and we could easily triple the number of cars here, but for now, we wanted to focus on just a handful at a time. So let's jump into it with the first car on our list, the Subaru XT. The Subaru XT was Subaru's first attempt at making a car that was more than just a transportation utility. Introduced in 1985, this marked a big departure for the brand, who up to that point had focused on building cars that were practical, reliable, and ugly. At least according to critics who evidently have no taste and don't realize just how sick something like this actually is. The XT is the quintessential 80s car. The exterior styling looks like a Honda Prelude front end franken-welded to a Chevrolet Beretta rear end. The interior styling was inspired by a mixture of aircraft cockpits and illicit substances, and crucially, it was available with part-time all-wheel drive and a turbocharged 4-cylinder boxer engine, putting out an absolutely blistering 112 horsepower. Okay, so maybe the power wasn't quite there yet. You may note 112 horsepower as being just a little less than that of an NA Miata, a V6 Mustang, or your average self-propelled lawnmower, but you can see the early stages of Subaru's performance hallmark starting to come together. In fact, the later models of the XT even had a full-time all-wheel drive system, which is very similar to the symmetrical all-wheel drive system that Subaru still uses today. Ultimately, the XT didn't make much of a splash and was discontinued in 1991, but it was still a cool car that gave an early glimpse at Subaru's offbeat, forward-thinking design philosophy and introduced some ideas that would go on to define the brand in coming decades. Unfortunately, one of their other early offerings has been almost entirely left behind at this point. Next up on our list is the Subaru BRAT.
The new Subaru BRAT has sleek, aerodynamic lines.
Just tell them it's good looking.
The Subaru BRAT was introduced in 1978 to match demand for small pickup trucks in the North American market. BRAT is actually an acronym for Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter. Talk about a mouthful. This car, truck, is an oddity for several reasons. First, it was an export-only vehicle that was never officially sold in Japan, and so it serves as a rare example of a cool Japanese car that they never got that we can lord over all of those importing services. Suck it, Japanese classics. It was, however, sold in several different markets under several different nameplates, including being sold in Australia as the Subaru Brumby. What a glorious Australian name that I'm kind of curious if they managed to stretch into some other heavy-handed acronym. Second, the BRAT was meant to directly compete with small trucks being offered by the other bigger Japanese manufacturers like Nissan, Mazda, and Toyota. But since Subaru was such a smaller company, they had to find some kind of way to keep the cost down, and they did it in true American fashion by exploiting a tax loophole.
What's more American than bingo? I am.
The United States has a controversial law called the chicken tax, which imposes a 25% tariff on imported potato starch, dextrin, brandy, and light-duty pickup trucks. Under normal circumstances, that would include our lovely BRAT here, but Subaru found a way around it. By welding in rear-facing jump seats in the bed, they were able to classify the Brat as a passenger car instead of a small truck, and therefore move that decimal 1 point to the left and pay 2.5% taxes instead of 25%. This allowed them to import the technically not a small truck much cheaper than they otherwise would have had to, and then offer it at a much more competitive price point.
Just tell them it saves you money, Buster.
In addition, the Brat was also offered with push-button four-wheel drive and, beginning in 1983, an optional turbocharged engine pushing a blistering 93 horsepower. Oh, sorry, 94 horsepower. Credit where it is due. Again, just like the XT, you can see the beginnings of what would go on to make a Subaru, but the Brat never really found its market and was discontinued in 1994 after a respectable 16-year production run. These days, the Brat has become a bit of a cult classic, but aside from the short-lived Baja, which was introduced in 2003 as sort of a spiritual successor, it's been all but left behind in Subaru's lineup. Unlike the next car on our list, which is still going strong today. The 1999 Subaru Legacy Outback.
Comes in handy when you're so late for a hair appointment.
I know what you're thinking. Wait. Why is there an Outback on your list of weirdest Subarus? Isn't that just kind of the standard Subaru? Isn't that the car you think of when you think of a Subaru? Well, yes and no. The 1999 Outback is pretty standard all around except for one little thing. It has a weird engine that was only produced for a single year for a single model. The 99 Outback looks pretty much identical to any other first-generation Outback, but it was a transitional year for Subaru. This was the last Outback of this body style, and Subaru was in the process of moving from the original design of their EJ25 engine to the next iteration. And the 1999 Outback used the newer Phase 2 bottom end with the older Phase 1 heads. Now, I'll kind of hedge my bets on this a bit by saying that I'm neither a mechanic nor particularly knowledgeable about these engines, but there doesn't seem to be any major mechanical advantage or disadvantage to them. It just kind of makes it a bit of an oddity because there's no other engine that's a really straightforward drop-in replacement. You can make a few different engines work, but it's not quite plug and play and requires a little bit of mechanical creativity. This, combined with the fact that the engine was only made for a single model for a single year, can make these deceptively difficult to keep on the road if they suffer any kind of a catastrophic failure. The 99 Outback just goes to show that even when Subaru is making a normal car, they'll sometimes make some weird decisions with it. Which brings us to the next car on our list, the Subaru Justy. No, not that one. Okay, well, kind of. All right, just bear with me for a second. Some background. The Subaru Justy began life as a pretty standard subcompact. We got it in America starting in 1987. In 1988, it received a four-wheel drive option. In 1989, it got a mid-cycle facelift. A 5-door model was introduced in 1990. In 1991, all models started to come with multi-port fuel injection. It was discontinued in 1994, and that was the end of the Subaru Justy in North America. But, and this is where it starts to get a little weird, it continued to be sold internationally. Sort of. In 1994, Subaru introduced the new Justy to the European market, a rebadged Suzuki Cultus, which itself had been sold with many different names in many different markets, including in North America as the Geo Metro. This version stuck around for a little while, but in 2004, the Subaru Justy changed from a Suzuki Cultus to a Suzuki Ignis, which itself had been sold with many different names, including as the Chevrolet Cruze in Japan before that nameplate was brought to America as the small sedan that we all know today. In 2007, the Justy changed again, this time to a Daihatsu Boon, another small subcompact that we never got in America. This version only lasted a few years, and in 2010, the Subaru Justy was replaced with the Subaru Trezia, and this marked the end of the Subaru Justy. Until 2016, when it reappeared yet again, this time as a Daihatsu Thor, a small compact passenger van. So yeah, that's how the Subaru Justy turned from a pretty standard 80s compact car to a Geo Metro, to a Chevy Cruze, and finally to a weird compact Japanese passenger van. None of these on their own are particularly weird, and to be honest, the newest version has some serious JDM charm to it, but man, what a strange journey it's been to get here. And speaking of cars that started out normal before getting really weird, that brings us to the final car on our list, the Subaru Impreza Casa Blanca. Hang on one second. Hey Siri, pronounce Casablanca.
Where your shipping address types itself. There's no place like Chrome.
Casablanca.
The Subaru Impreza Casablanca is an absolute masterclass in nightmare creation. This limited run version of the first generation Impreza wagon was made in 1999 and 2000. Allegedly inspired by the Subaru Vivio Bistro, this rolling monstrosity looks fit to star in a great value straight-to-VHS remake of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Possibly the single greatest proof that rare does not equal valuable, only 5,000 of these were made before Subaru was able to pry the Natty Light and the Harbor Freight welders out of their engineers' angry, spiteful hands. While I would never advocate for the designers to lose their jobs, I can only hope that they found the help they so obviously needed.
以气质成就自己。Casablanca.
And that does it for this installment. What do you think? What do I'm not really good at this. What do you think? What's your favorite weird Subaru? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed watching this, please feel free to drop us a like or click subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm, which, as we all know, controls everything on YouTube and most of the things in our lives at this point. Thanks for watching.